Hi guys, it's Julie Wallace with the Flip and Shift. Thanks for tuning in. Today we're going to talk a little bit about brain mapping, and I'm going to share with you a little bit of just a couple of examples on how you go about brain mapping your triggers and your conditioned stress response, whether it be a chronic or an acute stress response. Now, first of all, why is brain mapping important? Brain mapping is important for the flipping process, which again is the reconditioning or reprogramming process for our brains. And for those of you that are just tuning in and not sure exactly what I'm talking about, please take some time and follow or watch a few of our YouTube videos that we've posted here, because they're basically explaining the process and how to get to this point in the process. And again, we are currently in the flipping process. But to get there, you have to do a few things before you get there, okay? So please just take some time, go back, watch a few of our YouTube videos that we've posted regarding getting into the awareness stage, which requires some journaling, some time to just sit with yourself and think about what you're thinking about, your inner dialogue, and do some of the techniques that we suggested in our previous live videos. We also do our weekly lives on Fridays, which is on Instagram at the Flip and Shift at 9 a.m. Central Standard Time. So you can tune in there to learn about the process and where we're at in this process. So we're teaching everybody step by step on how to get into the flipping stage to reprogram or recondition our conditioned stress response. And again, if you guys watch our previous videos, you'll know that a conditioned stress response, when it's stuck, can be correlated to a chronic illness or something that's coming up, such as like maybe chronic migraines, chronic headaches. And sometimes we can even address acute type stress responses, which for some people are panic attacks or anything that's acute in connection to your stress response. So I won't keep going into that. Take some time, go back to YouTube or our Facebook page at the Flip and Shift and watch some videos to get caught up. But here we are in the process of brain mapping. Brain mapping is very important because we want to get to the core rooted trauma that's connected to your trigger or your stress response. So I'm going to pull up here on my iPad because I had some difficulty of downloading documents to be able to co-share them on here. So you're just gonna have to bear with me, a little bit of technical difficulties here. But so there was a group of psychologists that came up with the top 29 triggers for anxiety and panic. And I wanna share with you, and again, you can find all of this information on our Instagram page at the Flip and Shift. We have this posted and it'll give you a breakdown of all the 29 triggers for anxiety and panic that psychpoint.com came up with. So I'm just going to read them off. And so if any of these are triggering to you, just be aware. So common triggers for anxiety are large crowds, abuse, work. We hear this a lot for people that are trying to climb the corporate ladder or trying to take on new leadership roles, and they have some tendencies, some blocks, some confidence issues with that. So it can be very triggering. Fear of failure, which we see in a very, there's a lot of commonalities in people's journals with fear of failure, less than, poor performance, again, ties back to, some issues with work. Initiating conversation. We see that with a lot of people that have difficulty with going out to dinner with people, has a little degree of agoraphobia. Mistakes is very common. It kind of ties back into fear of failure. Home life can be very triggering for some people depending upon what is triggering in the home life. Could it be a spouse? Could it be a partner? Could it be a parent? Could it be a caregiver? Future projecting. We see this a lot with chronic illness. People do not like to make plans. So future projecting of, how am I going to feel? I may not be able to make plans. Small spaces, accidents is very triggering because of fear of safety. Trauma, roller coasters, which can be often confused with when you are in a chronic or conditioned stress state. Roller coasters or anything excitable is very, very, it crosses over with anxiety or panic. And then there's also heights, maintaining conversations. There's thinking about the past can be very triggering. Illness, Sleep can be very triggering for some people that are insomniacs. Trying new things, which we see that a lot with children. Meeting new people, again, difficult. That's some triggers for some people. Confrontation, finances can be very triggering. We see this a lot in marriages. Family issues, which ties in again with marriage and family. Forgetting, fear of being alone, fear of not being accepted, and then acceptance, and then fear of dying. And then we see that sometimes animals can be very triggering, dependent upon if there was some sort of traumatic, event that's happened with an animal in a person's past. So those are just some common triggers from what PsychPoint.com came up with, the top 29 triggers that they found with their patients. But I want to give you guys an example. Again, you'll be able to find this on our Flip and Shift page on Facebook. You'll be able to find it on our Instagram page and on our Facebook group. We are in development of our website. So currently it's in development, so you won't find anything there right now, but we will keep you posted when it's completely done. But that will be www.flipandshift.com. All right, so let's get to the brain mapping. I'm gonna give you guys an example of a brain map that you'll find on our Instagram page that shows you the breakdown. First of all, we ask patients, okay, so what are some of your triggers? And for this person, a trigger for this person was a crowded restaurant. So being asked to go out to dinner and go to a crowded restaurant. And so we'd ask them to put their trigger up in the top box that says trigger. And then off to the, depending upon which way you can see this, off to this side of the trigger, we write down either a conditioned stress response. It could be either acute or it can be chronic. So in this case, they were triggered by a crowded restaurant, and the acute stress response is a panic attack. So, so what we start asking them is just some simple questions. All right, so when you think of a crowded restaurant, what is a belief or something that you think about that's coming to mind in your head? What type of statements come to mind? Or emotions. So again, as you've watched previous videos, limiting belief statements follow with emotions. So we've asked this person, okay, you were triggered by a crowded restaurant. What were some of the beliefs or emotions that you felt with that trigger? And so this person wrote, and again, you can start mapping it, connecting it to these red, sorry, that just went out. I'm losing space here. Okay. Red balls there, or red circles. And so in those spaces, we wrote down belief or emotion. So I'm just going to read them off. I am anxious. So this is tied in. This is connected to the crowded restaurant, which is the trigger. I feel anxious. So, okay, what are things coming up? What type of statements or thoughts are coming up connected to the crowded restaurant? I have a fear of falling or falling down. So obviously a crowded restaurant makes them feel dizzy, and there's a lot happening. So it's overwhelming for this person. So they wrote that in this space, in this red circle here. And then now on the next one, they wrote, I feel not safe and not in control. So obviously there's a feeling of like being trapped, or I'm not safe, I can't get out, it's too crowded. And then, so what we start doing is we start breaking it down. Now, if you've watched some of our lives in the past, Tiffany's talked about the biochemical processing of what happens when you are triggered. And a lot of times, a lot of our senses are activated. So what we try to do is we start breaking down the senses. So touch, taste, smell, sound, and, I'm drawing a blank, sight. So then we start asking the simple questions. What about the crowded restaurant can you hear? And immediately this person wrote down, it's too loud. So it's a lot of loud noises. And then we asked them, okay, so you're in the crowded restaurant. Are there any smells that bothers you or initiates a panic attack? And this person wrote, well, I can smell strong smells like strong perfumes, and fish. So obviously being in this crowded restaurant that they were asked to go to, the fish smell and the strong perfume smells are really bothersome and triggering. The last one was sight. So you do not have to do all 5 senses when you're accessing the sensory portion of this with a trigger, you just want to get a few, at least a couple. So you want to try to get, you know, 1 or 2, if not 3. So this person was able to get 3 senses from this one trigger. And the last one is sight. So this person wrote down, there are people everywhere. There is no room to move. Okay, so now we have the senses all listed out. We ask them now, okay, now that you have your senses and you have your limiting belief statements connected to this trigger, at what point what I tell them to do is block out this top piece here, which is your trigger, and start asking yourself, when in your life did you ever, and we talk about sound, all right, so sound, when was it really loud and you felt there was a lot happening and you felt dizzy and you were scared? And this person wrote, well, when I was 5 years old, I can recall a memory that I heard fire alarms going off and my mom was panicked. And she picked me up and ran out of the house. So again, it was loud, the fire alarm was going off, and must have picked him up or her up in a flurry and a frenzy, and she felt really dizzy and, you know, discombobulated. So we write that trigger here at the bottom. So now we have one rooted memory that's connected to this trigger, okay? I mean, it's amazing. Crowded restaurant is connected to somebody at the age of 5 years old that heard a loud fire alarm and got swooped up and then, you know, ran out of the building. The next memory that came up for this person was, let's look at smells. It smells like strong perfume and fish. And what came up from this memory is, okay, whenever in your life did you smell strong, you know, you had a reaction to strong smells, strong perfume smells, and fish, and you felt completely overwhelmed and powerless or not in control? And this person wrote, I was 7 years old and I remember they were cooking fish and I felt really sick and felt feverish. So obviously this person at 7 years old was developing maybe like a flu or was getting sick. And so obviously the smells were really bothersome to this person. And I was afraid to throw up because I wasn't home, but at a fancy party with mom and dad. So obviously there was a lot of fancy people dressed up and had strong perfume smells. And then there was also the overwhelming smell of fish in the background. And they felt very out of control. They felt sick. They were wanting to get sick and couldn't. All right, the last memory is I was connected to people everywhere, no room to move, and feeling not safe and not in control. Okay, so they came up with a memory when they were 6 years old. My family was Black Friday shopping. I was trying to keep the pace, but there was a rush sale announcement. So clearly, obviously, it was maddening in the shopping area that they were at. And there was a loud announcement that came on over the speaker, and there was a rush sale, and this person was trying to keep pace with mom and dad throughout the store. And then all of a sudden they were lost. So they lost sight of mom and dad. So they felt that their safety net was gone and they were scared and there was no room and they were just this little being, you know, trying to find their way through this store, which is so sad. So, so as you can see, you have a trigger and now you have 3 events of recall of memories from way back in your childhood that's connected to this memory. This is the way the brain maps itself. So I'm gonna give you another example. And we'll just do one more in regarding, you know, going to a restaurant. So a lot of people that have food sensitivities or issues with eating, or, you know, or maybe you're on a limited diet and you're trying to lose weight and somebody wants to go to some amazing restaurant that's got a lot of foods that you can't eat. Well, for this person, the trigger was going to a restaurant and then not knowing the food menu, okay? And the chronic stress response with this was anxiety, so an acute stress response. The beliefs that came out of this map, okay, so mapping this out, were I'm limited on what I can eat here. I'm restricted. So there's not a lot of options for this person, and they're feeling very overwhelmed and anxiousness. There's some anxiousness. The other belief or emotion was I feel alone or isolated. So obviously feeling like, you know, I'm less than, or I'm not, you know, nobody else is in the same boat with me and I've got to be restrictive with my diet. All right, so we went ahead and broke it out into 3 different senses. So sound, smell, and sight. And with this one, we had 3. So we have 3 senses that we broke it down. So we asked this person, okay, going to the restaurant food menu, what are you feeling? What are you hearing? What are you smelling? What are you seeing? So with this situation, this person was hearing complaints from others about needing special menus. So obviously, she was triggered by the fact that she had to ask for a special menu, and people were, huffing and puffing and rolling their eyes. And the next one, it was, I smell foods that I cannot have. So maybe there were foods that were around, so the smell is there were foods around her that were very enticing, but she knows that she's restricted and she can't have those types of foods. The last one was, I see people eating anything and everything. So obviously it's connected to feeling alone and isolated, and she can't eat those things. Okay, so we started asking her, are there any, so we blocked the top trigger out, and we asked her, is there any time in your life where you heard people complaining about somebody else needing special needs or special menus, or that, that you're limited on what you can eat or restricted? There's some restrictions there. And she wrote, I remember being upset that I couldn't go with my older sister on a ride because I did not meet the requirements. So again, this was connected to the limiting belief of, I remember being upset and then not being able to meet the requirements because I was restricted. I was limited. The next one was for smell. So there was a connection to smells and connected to restriction and being isolated. So she came up with, I was told at the age of 8, so again, this is our middle, so we have one memory, now we have another memory. I was told at the age of 8 that I could not eat sweets unless I ate all of my veggie soup. Everyone had dessert but me. Okay, so she smells foods that she can't have, and now she correlated or connected the dots to when she was 8. And she was told she had to eat her veggie soup, and if she didn't eat her veggie soup, she couldn't have dessert. So she chose not to eat the veggie soup, and now everybody had dessert but her. So she was isolated and restricted, okay? The last one was, I see people eating anything and everything, and then connecting it to I feel alone or isolated. And so again, the brain maps in a very peculiar way. So it's amazing what comes out, okay, of all of this. So this one now, the last one is, I was shunned at school by the popular girls. They sat at a table and I was not invited to come hang out with them. I felt alone. All right, so going to a restaurant, the trigger was going to a restaurant and not knowing the food menu, or knowing that the food menu was very, she didn't have a lot of options. And then connecting it down to the fact that when she went to school, she couldn't go sit with the popular girls, so she felt very isolated and alone. All right, so as you can see, that this is really a powerful exercise in mapping. And when we start to do the flipping process, these pieces, these core rooted traumas or memories that are connected to limiting beliefs or fears or smells that were triggering, these are the pieces that we want to start putting down and putting in like a list to keep track of, because we're going to start reprogramming them. So that way we can then, recondition our brains when we are triggered, or we are, dealing with limiting beliefs or fears. I just wanted to share this information. You can find all of this information, examples of this type of brain mapping as we're going through this process, because when you get up to speed with us, you'll know that you need to start doing the work after you've done all your journaling, you started charting everything, and now we're going to brain mapping. We're looking at our triggers, and we're utilizing our sensory, or our senses, our 5 senses, and we're starting to break them out, because these key pieces that you find, your super sleuthing, you find these core rooted traumas or memories. These are the most important pieces that we want to start working on. All right, you guys, thanks for tuning in. And again, you can find all these examples on Instagram at The Flip and Shift. You can also get on our lives on Fridays. So Fridays we do lives on the next part of this process. So again, it's all calculated. It's, you know, we're teaching you these steps to be able to heal a conditioned stress response. All right, thanks again, and tune in on Friday at 9 a.m. Central Standard Time on Instagram at The Flip and Shift. And then if you want to watch our videos, go ahead and go onto YouTube at The Flip and Shift or our Facebook page, and you can find all of our hour-long videos that we post to give you all information on how to go about reconditioning your conditioned stress response, whether it be acute or chronic. All right, thanks again, you guys, for tuning in. Take care. Bye-bye.